God gave man 4 things. First, please write down these. Gifts. Each one of us has gifts. What's a gift? I have a gift of teaching. I have a gift of leading. I have a gift of counseling others. I have a gift of encouraging the downcast. I have a gift of resilience. Gifts, each one of us as a man. And when we speak of men, we're speaking also including our better halves. Because I see some ladies here, so what we are going to share, they too will benefit. A few. I've seen a few. So each one of us has gifts. The second one, each one of us has talent or talents. A set of talents. What's a talent? We call it a taranta. You remember in the book of Matthew, I think it's chapter 25, the parable of the talents. The one who got more and invested more. The one who got less and did not get much and buried it. Each one of us has a talent. I had wanted to do a small demonstration for you because a talent, I equate it with, there is a tactic when you see football being played. How many of you like football? Good. How many of you know a fellow called Mbappe? The young people know what I'm talking about. So in the last World Cup, Mbappe has long legs. So he runs, I can't remember, I think they were either Serbians or another team. He runs with the ball, he stops and looks at the opponent and smiles, and does the dribble and runs and scores. He's not playing football. He is living his talent. He can do it until the cows come home. He will not get tired. What do you do that doesn't get you tired, even if it's midnight? Have you discovered it? Let me tell you, if you discover that which you do without ceasing, there is your job. There is your enterprise. There is your business. Because if you take that and do what in commerce we call scaling, you scale it, you have customers who pay you for what you like doing. So Mbappe earns a lot of money for simply fulfilling his talent. The third thing we have is called abilities. So the letter G is for gifts. The letter T is for talent. Are you with me? So I'm not a trained teacher, but I really like that when I am communicating, I am going above the surface and reaching a man's heart and soul, so that if 2 people out of 100 can catch it, I have succeeded. Because those 2 will change another 10, and another 10 will change another 100. So abilities, what is an ability? There are people who do some things, and you wonder, how did they do this technique? They have a special ability. They are charismatic. People get attracted to them. I'm just using just the word charisma. The word charisma in English means the electricity between the speaker and the one being spoken to. There is electricity there, and someone who is speaking does not know that that's an ability which other people don't have. So when I was growing up, my father, I come from a farm. I am not a town child. 12 years of my 12 years, I was working at the farm. No shoes, 1 shirt, 1 trouser, but on a full stomach, because my father, a born-again man, said, you go to school with 1 shirt, but you will not go to school hungry because you will steal. He prioritized what was important. Men, there's a lot I could share with you. Keep that word somewhere, prioritization. What is it I prioritize in the scheme of things? I don't have all the resources in the world I want to do, but this very thing for my household, it has to happen. My father did that, and many years when I was older, and I saw young people on the streets begging for many reasons, many reasons, from many parts of our country. Something told me, you feel pity, but someone did not prioritize. Someone down somewhere who was like your father did not prioritize, because nobody spoke into their lives to know that a man's responsibility starts at his household level. There is no leadership, national, community, anywhere, unless we fix household level. So, 12 to 13 years of my life, I'm running, going to school, so I understand the elements of nature. So my father tells me, in the morning when you go to work, before you run to school, you got to get your small hoe. I've shared this example many times. Pick the seeds, either beans or maize, put them in your mouth, right? Hold the stick, the hoe with your hand. Dig a hole, spit in two, use this leg to cover with the soil, keep a straight line. So he said, Father, what do you mean? He says 8 o'clock. If a neighborhood child comes down wanting to talk to you, the mouth is working, the hands are working, the legs are working. You have nothing to speak to them about. What was my father telling me? Work. Work is priority. If you don't work, you don't eat. Where does that teaching comes from? Prioritizing at a household level. Ability is that tactic that you use, that God has given you, and maybe some people don't. So, can I use maybe the word enablement? Would that make sense? You know the meaning of the word enablement? Okay, I think in the Christian faith where we are, we call it an anointing. Huh? Those words tend to share some things. An ability is I am enabled to do something which no other person can do. But I'm also anointed, because some people don't have that oil that I have to get a thing done within its season. Sometimes the seasons can pass and people don't notice them. Are we together? Now, the final one, I said there are 4, is called resources. So resources come last. The summary of these gifts is called guitars. Guitars. Gifts, talents, abilities, and resources. Why do resources come last? If you start a man with resources, you have messed him up. You finished him. If you start a child with money, you've really finished that child. Okay? If you start a country with enough oil from underground being sold and a lot of money, you've killed that country. Am I speaking things we understand? So there was a man, it's not a good example, because this man, Rudyard Kipling, who said it, was an imperial writer, Rudyard Kipling. And this morning I was just checking. He has a quotation, one of his poems. He said, if you can meet triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, you'll be a man, my son. If you can meet triumph, success, and disaster, trouble, and treat those two impostors just the same, right? You will be a man, my son. So Rudyard Kipling was talking about something I don't want to share with you that wasn't good, but I take the content of what he means. Resources come last because God gave us the first 3 things so that we can understand the 4th. In the Bible, in the book of Genesis, I don't want to take a lot of time by asking you to open your Bibles, but just note it. Somewhere it says that before the seeds from the ground, I think, could grow, before the plants could grow, before the rain could fall, God needed man to take charge. The resources were there, but he needed a manager. So, please mark those guitars. How many of us are leaders? Oh, thank God, we're a number. Do we know what leadership means? It is a ship attached to a leader. Okay, just understand it that way. It is a mega ship in the middle of an ocean with a lot of tempest, but it is attached to a human being. Are we together? So leaders can lead their people in about 3 ways. You can move ahead of the people, right? And they don't understand you. You can hold these fantastic ideas, these things you want to change, but nobody is listening. You are too ahead of your... So, will you allow me to give this political example? And it has no color, right? It has no, this is church. So there was an election in 1980. And towards the beginning of 1980, there was jostling for political parties to return. There was Uganda National Liberation Movement that said you should have an umbrella. Some leaders said, no, we don't want an umbrella. We want to go back to our old parties. Indeed, we held an election. Now, I was a young boy in primary 5. I remember a young, balding leader, youthful, maybe 34, 35, saying, how far can Uganda remain a laughing stock of the world? Why don't we do the things that other countries do? So they said, who are you? You are too small to make sense. Huh? But there were some students, universities, who said, but this voice is very nice. Okay? It took many years for later the country to understand that perhaps this man had a better vision, but at the time the followers did not know what he's talking about. Eh? If you lead too ahead of your people, you leave them behind. And let me tell you what happens. You become a martyr. Do you know martyrs? The guy who's shot and killed? Okay. The good thing about being a martyr is that people will always remember you. The bad thing is that you are dead. You cannot do anything. Eh? So leaders should know how much distance ahead of their people they are walking, because leadership is as strategic as followership. Have you caught that? Leadership is not taught, it is caught. I don't know which school you go to and become a leader. No, you catch it because you are using all your sensory, all your 5 senses. Right? You are studying, you're reading, you're following, you have the Holy Spirit guiding you. So, if you walk too far ahead of, so many people want to sit, what example can I give you? So when we were coming here, they wanted me to come here. Drive the car, come, get out of the car. I said, shut up, just go. I want to come slowly and enter the tent. I wasn't doing it to be humble. No. How I was raised is that you need to let people give you a seat, right? Don't clamor and demand for seats, because those who follow you are more important than the seat you occupy. Many leaders want doctor, excellency, professors. It's okay to be excellency. But really, leadership is about followership. I don't have that. Okay. So, leadership is as strategic as followership. Please note that. Don't walk ahead of the people too far and you become a martyr and they don't understand you and you are out of season. But you can also walk behind the people. You can see who is doing what. I think walking behind the people is good because you can tell who is messing, who is not doing right, and who is doing okay. Okay? But that's not enough. Because leaders are not mistake tellers. Right? Leaders are not the ones who say you are wrong all the time. Leaders inspire. The word inspiration comes from the same Greek root as breathing in. We breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. So, inspiration often does not come from leading from where? Behind, because you are really also not at the front. You are expecting, if someone makes a mistake, it is not me, I'm watching. Leaders can lead from a third category called walking beside the people. Walking beside your followers. When we go to church and wed, where does a woman stand? On your arm. On the? You are on her right, I think. To say that whatever comes from any corner, I grab, I hold, I protect you till death separates us. So, walking beside the people is great. But be careful that the people's culture does not intoxicate you and you become like them. Now you're going to say, but what does Rwabwogo want us to lead from? I just want you to know that you must strike a balance. In front, behind, beside, because you must know more than those who follow you. You must take more risks than those who follow you. But you must also step back and watch that they can succeed where you are not. Right? But you must be so close to them on their side that you can understand where the pain comes from, so that you are not living in the clouds. Are we together? So I'm very happy that I have leaders this morning for us to say we are now going to tackle the roots, right? And the roots will give us the fruits we need. Remember the tree? The tree does not die from the branch or from the leaves. The tree dies from where? If you deal with the roots, you can save the branch. You can also save the fruits that you need. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time on something I call what tools drive wholesome community recovery. What tools? What are the tools? What is a tool? A tool is an instrument that you use to fix a situation. So if you have had a community that has had trauma for a long time, surely there must be some tools that you use to make sure that that society that has had trauma, trauma that comes from war, trauma that comes from displacement, does not become a signature tune to build a sense of victimhood. Because I suffered, okay, so let me just use my example. Because I grew up with no shoes until I was 13, 14 years. Because I had all sorts of diseases from worms to chicken pox. Because I went to schools that are no longer in existence, right? I went to a school where early morning it would be a lodge, but we bring a blackboard, they are washing their bed sheets, but we are studying for Cantab. Because I did not get the best treatment from Budo, right? Because I did not have a father or mother who could afford those schools. So now I become a victim of what I did not get when I was growing up. I become a slave of what I went through. It's called trauma. Trauma must be removed by the Holy Spirit, by the renewing of our mind. Right? And we face the world as if nothing happened to us. We pull ourselves by our bootstraps because there is no Icelander who will do it for us. We pull ourselves by our bootstraps because we know that South Korea, I had brought pictures for you, so I'm looking at them. You are not able to see them. South Korea, Japan, Israel were bombed to smithereens. Do you know the meaning of the word smithereens? There was a country called Japan. Okay? And I will tell you why I don't want to fully compare that, because that was Second World War. There was a part of that country, because it had an elephant spirit. It never gave up. It refused to say we can have a conversation. That country of Japan said, until our king, our emperor, calls us back from battle, there's nothing we will talk about. Huh? In fact, there was a soldier, a lieutenant, who went to fight in Philippines in 1941, and he came back in 1974. And he was locked on an island, and he said, I have not heard from the emperor. They sent a helicopter with the commander who recruited him. They threw some papers from the sky. They said, the war ended 30 years ago. He said, you are lying. The emperor has not told me. Eventually, they brought the commander who had enlisted him. Can you believe this? Enlisted him 30-something prior, right? The commander had retired. He was an old man. The teeth is gone. They brought his mother, who was 90. They landed them. They said, son, the war ended. His uniform was intact. His rifle was intact. He was living on slaughtering animals. He said, the emperor has not called me back. That is American propaganda. The war is still going on. We can be slaves of the past. Don't we know? I know that. I know that as a person, because many, many times, and I have asked God to really allow me to not say things, and then I don't practice them. When I was growing up, because we are village boys, you're running to school, there are no toilets. You pee wherever you see. Huh? So they told us when we were young that when you pee in the middle of the road, you got to spit there. Because if you don't spit there, someone will step there and you'll never be a man. Does anyone know that? I don't know whether you have that in Acholi. You have that? Or they would say, if you are grazing goats or cows and you sleep, remember you are a 5-year-old child. You are sleeping, the cows have gone, they have left you. When you wake up, spit in the left hand, use this hand, slash the saliva wherever it goes. That's where the cows are. What do you think that is? Slaves of culture, of what you found. Eh? So we might laugh about this, but we can be slaves of witchcraft and we don't know. We can be slaves of what we found in our homes, but we don't know. It has calcified. You know, these things that I use examples that are really village, because that's my background. I may wear a tie, but I know all this. When you walk a lot and you don't have water for washing, what happens at the back of your foot? In Ankole, we call it a migari. In Unyoro, it's called calcification. There's a lot of cuts. The foot stops feeling anything. You can punch it, you don't hear anything. You can even inject it, you can't hear anything. Culture is like that. You are so gone that you can't hear anything. So, this country called Japan was bombed completely with an atomic bomb. They still have infants born with problems. You can imagine 70 years later. The bomb is the one that got Japan to surrender. But that country had a prime minister called Nobusake. Again, I don't want to bother you with these names, and because I'm kind of I prefer that leaders read on their own. He said, the people who bombed us must have something better than us. Instead of hating them, we are going to befriend them. And when we befriend them, we are Japanese. We don't lose who we are. But we take what they have that we don't have from them. They befriended the Americans. They got technology. They got everything. Japan today is economy number 5 in the world. They don't want you to tell them about what happened in the war, but they remember the war. It's the same with South Korea. South Africa has struggled. You must have seen the struggle between, it's no longer with white people, it's black people. What's that spirit that does not make us look inside of us and say, we will never be from another country or another continent or another region. We must learn to work together. Zimbabwe, Mozambique, where the NRM was born. The first 28 the president talks about in Monte Paz, in Cabo Delgado. There is now trouble in Cabo Delgado. The south is a bit better. The north has problems. Mozambique has struggled. Not as much as South Africa, but South Africa was a larger economy. South Africa's economy is $400 billion GDP. What's your GDP as a country? Who knows? 45, 48. Okay? So you need about how many? 6 or 7 South Africas to make Uganda. No, so many Ugandans to make one South Africa. Okay? But what if we had 20 years of no production in northern Uganda? What economy would we have today? Would be different. You don't know that Gulu is the center of Africa. It's the center of the world in weather, in soils, in everything. But it's also a center of culture. Anybody calling themselves Nyankole, Ganda, Soga, things came from here. Some of us know it. Some of us know that things came from Northern Berel Gazelle. And the settlement was here. If you go here in Pakwachi, there's a place called Pubungu. Who knows Pubungu? So my pronunciation may be different. But that's where if you ask the Jonams, they say that's where the Luo people left us. Ask the people who remained, that's why we're strong. We never left. There's a type of fish they eat. Who knows it? Small fish? Now you are home. Onangnang. So Onangnang now, these people from Mbarara and Kampala, they come in their uniform, they say, you are catching immature fish, this very... So the Jonam say, you know what you're talking about. This Onangnang is so mature, but you don't know it because you have not taken time to study. Culture knowledge, knowing each other is the beginning of change. Our people don't take time to study each other. They don't take time to know who is Jokene. Where does he come from? He may be my brother. They don't say, but these people who say they are from Lira, they are from Oyam. You know now how we have so many districts now? I am from Dokolo. But we know Ngeta Hills and when you arrived. We understand before all this happened. So it's important that that I will speak about culture as I close. That thing that keeps us apart is part of the example that I gave you. You remember the foot that no longer hears anything? That's what leadership needs to change. So how Japan, South Korea, Israel, they managed end of the war, but let me warn you, this was Second World War. Part of the trouble we have in Africa is that this was not World War. What happened in northern Uganda was not World War. It was Civil War. What does Civil War do? Why am I giving you this context? So that we can understand where we come from and what could have happened. You see, a thing in Bunyoro we say that the stone you see, it cannot destroy your hole when you are digging. It is the stone you don't see because you don't know, it can destroy your tool. World War is not Civil War. Civil wars pit neighbor against neighbor. Please know that. Huh? You now stop seeing your neighbor as a neighbor, you see them as an enemy. Civil wars do not receive global attention until it is too late. They fester like a wound until you cannot understand which part of the wound should I treat. Maybe it is gangrene, it should be cut off. That's how civil wars are. That's why this trauma, displacement, all the things that happened are so ingrained in us, even if we think we have overcome them. A disease you do not speak about, you cannot find its treatment. A disease whose treatment is unavailable is a disease you transfer to the next generation. My father lost his mother, all his parents, and remained with a small sister before he was 15. So he decided that he was going to find a wife, and that this wife will be his friend, his sister, his mother, his everything. So he went and took a wife from another clan, brought her home, and they made an agreement. Agreements are powerful, people. Marriage agreements are deep covenants. Faith agreements are deep agreements that we shouldn't play with. So he said, if I ever fall sick, if I am ever in deep trouble, I never ever want to hear you, woman, laughing by the fireplace with other people. You could say that my father was possessive, but what was in his mind is, be with me in trouble, be with me in happiness. He didn't know God. He didn't know. He had a sense of spirituality, but he didn't know how to translate this in the material world. So one day, he is tending cows. He is chased by a wounded buffalo. I don't know if any one of you has ever met a wounded buffalo. It will chase you to trample you. He ran. He had a spear in one hand and a stick. He climbed a tree. The buffalo was pulling the soil with his hooves and like, come down and I finish you. Now, the buffalo walks off. In the fear of a child, a teenager, he falls off the branch. He lands on his own spear. It cuts him and the intestines come out. He has a loin. Do you know what a loin is? People were not dressing at that time. They were not wearing ties. He puts a loin to tie this. He goes home. Now, because he had no relatives, nobody cared whether Rwabwogo would survive. His name was Rwabwogo, like me. And a month of sickness, the woman is just 18, 19 years old. The woman starts to laugh by the fireplace. Right? And what happens is that every morning, they would bring a white chicken at 5 a.m. and put it on top of the grass-thatched house where he was living, and they would do libation. Am I speaking things you understand? And they would do some chanting and say, Rwabwogo will get better. Eventually they said, but this man will die. We should bury him because nobody knows his relative. In the middle of all this trouble, he heard a voice say, you will not die, you will live. And he said, is that my cow talking to me? Because he didn't know this voice, what it was. But it was the voice that changed him. We have more numbers. We have more numbers coming late. Okay, so if my father had not changed by listening to this voice, can I ask you to stand again? Just stand again. I see some people dozing off. Just stand again. Can I have people do this in one place? Okay? So I'll count up to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, just stretch your hand. Okay, just get this arm and the other side, and give me a slight dance in one place. Aha. Please resume your seats. If that voice that said you will not die, you will live, if he had not obeyed it, he would have transferred to his children, the next generation, a white chicken on the roof and libation at the front. So a disease that you don't get treatment for, you don't talk about, will be transferred to the next generation, and that generation will blame you for not acting judiciously to save it from the troubles that you had. Am I speaking to you people? Am I speaking to someone to understand? Okay. So, very quickly, I wanted to... So the consequences of a disease that has not been treated very well is what we see expressed in certain things. For example, alcohol. Alcohol is an expression of something. Alcohol is not the real problem. Alcohol is an underlying message that something needs to be fixed somewhere. Number 2, prostitution. Prostitution. Am I speaking about things? Do you want me to be, if I'm not honest, I cannot be helpful. If I do the political talk, I will not have been helpful for you today. Yet this day will never come back. So prostitution is an expression of something that has gone wrong. So you can go and take people off the street and say, we rehabilitate them, but you have not dealt with the underlying soil out of which prostitution came from. Violence is an expression of something that has gone wrong. Witchcraft, expression of something that has gone wrong. Insurgency, the inability to have a discussion, is underlying behavior reflected in how a society is dealing with its past. It is a way to cope. You know the meaning of the word coping? So I had a neighbor who passed away some 2-3 years ago. He came to me. He was an older man that he was like 72. He said, Odrek, I want you to buy me a vehicle. He said, you? Vehicle for what? Your church is there. Your children are here. You will have problems with fuel. Are you trying to express yourself? He said, no. I want a car so that when this woman of mine quarrels, I jump in, I drive to another part. I go to Liantonde. Liantonde was his nearest town. But that man was trying to cope with the quarrels of the wife. Another person can cope by drinking alcohol. Another person can cope by, I will beat you until that head understands. But the woman might be coping in another way by picking a gun and killing you. These are all coping measures. Some people cope by depression. Some people cope by reliving the past. And they don't move ahead. It's like there's an invisible force that says you can't move beyond here. You are always like this. So please, whenever you see those things, take them as signs or consequences of a disease that we need to uproot. Therefore, as a tool, recovery must be intentional. Please note that word. Intent. When you go to a court of law, the judge does not talk about the actions you took. He asks about the intention you had. You've heard the difference between murder and manslaughter. Someone can die out of accident. The intent was not to kill the person. Right? So, recovery should be intentional. Number 2, should be disciplined. The word discipline comes from the same soil with the word disciple. They are both Greek words. They mean that you cannot be disciplined unless you are a disciple of something higher than self. Unless you are following something that is bigger than you. Recovery is a process that requires personal and community leadership. So intentional, disciplined, personal, community leadership. In other words, it's an exercise that you don't do casually. You are very deliberate on what you want to achieve. What you want to achieve, how you want to achieve it, when you want to achieve it, and who you do it with. In 2006, before Fidel Castro died, Fidel Castro was the president of Cuba for a very long time. And he held together a country, a small island, 90 kilometers below the US. The US put embargo up to today. But the economy of Cuba kept producing doctors to send to Africa. Imagine someone is in trouble, but they send doctors to us. Okay? Now, so they asked Fidel Castro, they said, Fidel, if you are able to recreate the battle that brought you into power in 1959, how many people would you go back with? He had started the battle with 85 people. Fidel Castro kept quiet. After a minute, he said, 3 people. So the interviewer said, what? I thought you went with 85. He said, no, 3 people. He said, I wasted a lot of time trying to wait on the other 82, right? Yet the 3 who were necessary to bring the change, I ignored them. That touched me. Like, we can spend the whole day trying to get everybody in the room, but there are a few people who you touch. And by the sheer power of example, by the sheer power of their faith, by the sheer power of commitment, the rest of the society will turn slowly, and join. That's the intentionality. Now, so, I always want you to ask yourself, if we had not lost these 20 years, what kind of infrastructure would we have in northern Uganda today? If investment in infrastructure had started at the same pace across the country, what population growth would we have today? Because population, some people think population is too many people is bad, but we think that we are a society that has many unmet needs. You know unmet need? It is when you are still using paraffin, yet there is electricity to freeze passion fruits and you sell them. There is a need that is not being met. It's not the size of the population. It's the quality of that population. What kind of investments would have been here? What kind of education and robotics and AI and science would have been in northern Uganda? If you think that way, you will say, okay, I'll not live in the past. It happened. Right? But I am new today, and I make an intentional, disciplined, personal, and community process to change. What is the genesis of all this? Are we still together? How did this all start? Please bear with me. I want to give you a little bit of history so you can understand it's not your mistake. It's not you alone who began this. There were many forces combined to make you who you are, eventually what you became. If you don't understand those forces, you will be on the surface of things. That's why we like history. Because history tells us there's nothing new in the world. There's nothing new in the world. In a country called South Africa, this fellow I mentioned called Rudyard Kipling, the poem. C.C. Rhodes, there was a man called C.C. Rhodes, the one whose Rhodesia was named about. For those of you who are older, there used to be a country called Rhodesia. C.C. Rhodes wanted to take South Africa, but he brought in other people who were not the Dutch Boers, and he incited them so that in that incitement he could come and fight the Boers. He's using all the elements to get what he wants. Sometimes we are like a puppet being held and used for intentions we don't know. So let me give you some Genesis as I know it. Maybe it can help a younger person to understand how to deal with trauma and recovery. So many of you know that in the year 1872, in a place not far from here in Patiko, in Pajule Hills, Ajul, I think it's called Ajul Hills, Samuel Baker. Does anyone remember that man, Samuel Baker? Sir, they used to call him Sir, they knighted him. Thank you. Thank you very much. Samuel Baker crosses from, I think he came from Omdurman, he came through Bor of South Sudan. He settled a bit in Torit in a place called Tirangore. I've been in all these places personally. And then he came down and settled here at Fort Patiko. And that first contact had a king. There must have been a king here who he met. What was his name? Does anyone know him? What was his name? Huh? Okay, so let me not take a lot of time. So there are several roads. We know someone called Rotawich, out of who Kololo comes from. We know the meaning of the word Kololo. Well, so when I said that you have a lot of influence but you don't know it, even from a kingly level, you have touched the capital city of a country, right? We know wrote Pajule in 1945. We know wrote Matayo Lamotte of Adilan Kingdom. Okay? So what if these roads had cooperated with Buganda and Bunyoro and Nkore to say, Sir Samuel Baker, it stops here. We are one. What would have Uganda be like today? Wouldn't it be a different country? Because the European countries did it that way and survived. Why do I say that? Because I find similarities in some words. The word Onek Bonyo, who knows what it means? Onek Bonyo. Huh? So Onek Bonyo is the locusts. That's how we call Mwitanzije in Bunyoro. So when I read those words, I thought Onek Bonyo and Mwitanzije show me that the Shiluk of South Sudan today, we know the people called the Shiluk, out of who the Arabs started the word Cholo. Out of the word Cholo, you have Chuli and you have Acholi. Does anyone agree with me on that? Because the Acholi is a very recent word. Eh? This, what we call Acholi, is not ancient. Eh? But it tells me that the people of South Sudan, the people of northern Uganda, the people of I don't even want to belabor the point here because the president speaks about this almost all the time. He speaks about one Kachi of Buganda. It tells me that if there are some similarities in language, language is an expression of culture. It's an expression of food, of seasons, of habits. It tells me that there is a thing that those roots I mentioned, if they had cooperated and used what strengthens us instead of what separates us, we would be a different country today. Now, but we did not. We did not work together. So on March 10th, 1900, at 11 o'clock, a kingdom called Buganda signed an agreement with the British, with Lugard. Lugard had been to, when he left to Uganda, Lugard went to Nigeria. He's the one who got those states in northern. Are we still together? Yes. Do you like history? So he goes to Nigeria after fixing Uganda for Britain. Like, I've fixed you now. I can move on. But he came alone. Alone. And with another captain called Williams. And they recruited people called Zanzibaris. And they gave them rifles. And then they went to present-day Khartoum. And the Arabs call it Khartoum, not Khartoum. Khartoum. Khartoum is the confluence of two rivers. That's what it means. Actually, it is Khartoum, because Kir is River Nile. It's a river. Salva Kiir, General Salva Kiir, that's how he gets his name. So he gets those, he calls them Sudanese soldiers. He brings all of them to Kampala and he says, at the seat of the king, that's where the English people should settle. And then he starts to recruit a force, because he found us already divided, to pick a force from Buganda and add the Sudanese, add the Zanzibaris, add the Indians. It's really a cacophony of many, many people, right, who just colonized us. But he's working not on behalf of British government. No, he's working on behalf of Imperial British East African Company. It's a company that colonized us. And he says, because these were Faranzas, they had troubles in their continent. He said, I don't want Wafaranzas here. He chases them to Voodoo. He says, go far away from us. I will give you. Imagine a Mzungu arriving and said, I will give you. Now, he gives them Masaka, present-day Voodoo. Now, you know why some parties and particular religions are strong there. It is because of the action of 1900. The Baganda say, Okaliada kadada, that what you eat, we will see it. And then he said, okay, there are these people called Mohammedans who are disturbing me. I also don't want them near me here in Mengo. I want a buffer between me and the Wafaranza, so he threw them in Butambala and in Piji. If you go to Butambala, that's where Alhaji Moses Chigongo comes from. You'll find a lot of religion of a type there. Okaliada kadada. I hope I explained that here, because you may not speak Luganda. So he fixed us, and he went on to fix other parts of Africa. He fixed Nigeria, he went and fixed Nyasaland. There's a big book I finished reading last month. He writes it himself. He talks about you people and Buganda and everyone in Uganda. He understood you better than you understand each other. He studied Luganda and learnt it and spoke to Smeika Kungulu. Does anyone know Smeika Kungulu? And he said in Luganda, Wotuke Wakabaka, this is Lugard speaking. Wotuke Wakabaka, he's sending Kakungulu to go to the east. No sanga Kabaka Masonga Gakanude. If you see any Kabaka where you are going and you see his eyes are open, echo chatudeko tochikwatako chimurekere. Chiri cholaba mbu amaso mazibe chitwale chicho. That if the king's eyes are closed, that's your land. Take it. No wonder on April 17th at 11 o'clock, 1899, here in Lango, Kakungulu captured who? Mwanga and Kabarega. He captured them. He found them in Dokolo. I even know the sub-county. Arrested them for Lugard. And poor Kabarega was trying to resist. He cut off his arm to tell you, I'll fix you. Chopped off the arm. If you look at that picture, Indian soldiers are standing behind Kabarega and Mwanga, arrested. When you don't know each other and you don't know yourself, someone will fix you. And they will fix you for life. Change starts with you. In a business, they say that if you are not on the table where a business is discussed, right? You are on the menu for lunch. They are going to eat you. Many, many parts of Africa are like that. They are eating us with spoons. We are just not watching. So because of that decision that happened on 10th of March 1900, very quickly 4 societies emerged in our country. I want you to list those societies because they'll help you understand how we ended up with civil wars and fighting each other. The first group of people were called sons of chiefs and priests. If you're not a son of a chief or a priest, you don't go to school. There were no schools of government until 1955. Are we together? So if you are not a son of a chief, or a son of a priest, omwana w'omwami in Buganda, or omwana wa kabona. Is it kabona in Luganda? I think that's how they call a priest. You do not have access to education. Because of that, all parents, so the ones who made it to school are the independence leaders. They are ambassadors. They were permanent secretaries. They were all in the government. Just go back and check. The late Milton Obote was the son of a chief, right? The late Cuthbert Obwangol from Teso was son of a chief. If I name some people here, you'll find that either you are son of a reverend or a priest, and the British were even insistent that you are a son of a reverend from the Anglican Church. That's why Benedicto Chiwanuka won the election in April of 1961. They said, no, we don't hand over to the Wafaransa. We'll conduct another election and hand over to the Wangereza. Did you know that? Someone is playing all this game, but you are not there. You are just responding to what they are doing. So, the sons and chiefs, sons of chiefs, please mark no daughters. No daughters yet. Daughters are very recent. So, sons of chiefs and priests got the first education, and every parent who eventually took a child to school wanted their child to join the government. It's simple. If someone has come from a village like me and I become an ambassador and I return at Christmas and you see me, so every parent wants their child to be not a business person, not a workshop manager, not a tractor driver. Those are nothing. Those are nothing. Yet, you know, the people who make all your vehicles, all your tractors, they are all Senior 1 and P7. In Germany, in Japan, that's the highest paid profession because they get you to move from one point to another. Us, we educate because we want government jobs. That has had a long-term effect on our society. Okay? This is category 1. The second category of our society that emerged was an army from what we call in English acephalous societies. An army from acephalous societies. An acephalous society does not have a centralized kingdom. Buganda was a centralized kingdom. Bunyoro was around a king, right? We too had kings, but often were more independent of those kings. If I had 10 households and I am their leader, I defend them. But in Buganda, if you attack a king, all the 52 groups have formed an army, they go against you. So you can imagine these Muzungus had a theory on how to deal with us. So Lugard said, don't try and recruit the army from Buganda, Bunyoro, and Kore. Those guys have one king. You go and get the army from those who do not necessarily have a centralized kingdom. They are called acephalous societies. Are we together? So, because of that, Lugard said a rifle, a weapon, is your means of social ascent. Social ascent is, in other words, if you have a gun, you don't sleep hungry. What does that tell you? If you have a gun, you cannot fail to marry. This is Lugard and his people training our people because he wants loyalty to him. Because he knows that it will take him time and investment to deal with a whole nation to create an army. So he recruits, largely many of you know that the army for many years came from northern Uganda. But northern Uganda is part of Uganda. Why don't you recruit from Kabale? Up to 1979, there were people recruiting soldiers with a tape measure. In Masaka, 79, I was in P4. They would have to bring a tape measure and measure how high you are. They say, this one can be a soldier, go. Then they measure, this one is 5.9, go away. Is fighting to do with height or fighting to do with the spirit? If you are angry enough and you have a cause, anybody, including a PGM, can defeat you. But they ingrained it in us You have to be tall. You have to be this. Was that you deciding? No. Someone was deciding and making it emphatic that this should last forever. Okay? The third society, I'm taking a lot of time, was a small entrepreneurial minority running large-scale plantations, factories. They were exporting. They were called Arabs and Indians. Very small percentage, but the British said, you are the one who will run factories. Now, in 1945 to 49, Ignatius Musazi the late, who is buried at Kololo airstrip, he led a rebellion in Katwe to say, we are tired of growing cotton and coffee, but we can never process them ourselves. We can't gene cotton. So when you hear the president talk about processing, it's not a new message. It's just that it's a message that people don't get. Because we are used to receiving what other people have processed and we give them higher value, we have remained who we are. Imagine Musazi in 1945 fighting for what President Museveni fights for today. It is because we told our children that starting a business or going to a vocational college is wrong. Either you are an army officer or you are in the government. Now, because of this minority having no social base, that's why in 1972, Idi Amin chased them. I don't know if I've shared this story with you. I feel like I'm running late on these examples. So it's 1962. We have just gotten independence. Idi Amin goes to Kampala Club. He wants to have a beer. He was a Muslim, but he would drink, okay? So he goes to Kampala Club because he's the army commander. He gets to the club at 4 in the afternoon, and an Indian comes out, an Indian gentleman. Indians were Ugandans, right? But holding British passports. They were the managers of restaurants, hotels, right? If they caught you trying to gene cotton as an African, they would arrest you and take you to Luzira. That work is not for you. That work is for another person. Now, so Idi Amin asked for a beer. The Indian gentleman said, go away. This club is not for Africans. Idi Amin keeps quiet. He goes behind the kitchen. Remember, he had been in the Second World War. He had been a cook. So he knew the language of how the kitchen works. So he said, yeah, I am very thirsty. He's a major. Really? He said, so the cook gives him 2 beer bottles. He sits under a tree. He takes his beer. He looks at that Kampala Club. And he says, your time will come. Your time? So sometimes leaders can carry personal problems and nationalize them. No wonder. Yes. No wonder in May of 1972 he said, I'm in Tororo, I had a dream that all of them should live in 3 months. Or Kaliada, it is that mistreatment by a minority that generated that anger. And that anger, don't think that Idi Amin was the only one interested in chasing people. There were many people who were happy that it had happened. Even Kenya, they were trying to do it. President Kenyatta Sr. said, let's buy these companies instead of chasing away. It was another model, but the idea was these small minorities who are doing business, why not us? Instead of learning from them, remember the Japanese and the Americans? And strengthening ourselves, just live. When you live with the factories, you live with the jobs, you live with technology, you live with intellectual patents. We recovered to 1971 levels in our economy in 2009. Can you imagine how we were in 71, we recovered in 2009? So that third category had no social base. That's why we had the expulsion of 72. Finally, category 4. Didn't I say 4 societies? The last one are called peasants. When I was born in 1969, Uganda had 96% peasants. All the other three categories constituted 4%. Who is a peasant? Peasant was like my father. My father without Christ would be a man who goes in the forest, cuts a tree, right? And makes a bed for himself. I think it still happens. I hope you know. Okay, I knew language would come up. So I'm about to finish, but I'm told some people have come in, and I've seen people who don't speak English at all. So if I have an interpreter, would that cause problems for those of you who speak English? Are you sure? Please don't be humble. Just say, no, we are tired. It will take a lot of time. Then I know what to do. Is it okay to have an interpreter for our last segment? Okay, give me an interpreter quickly. Quickly. Give us a microphone. So what was the consequence of having those 4 classes? I said a peasant is one who goes in a forest, cuts a tree, makes a bed.
Awachi ngata lakingang madrome pinchero don voa meyoboka vorne.
A peasant is the one who goes and gets some leaves and makes medicine for himself.
Beru ngatumo macherno jang yat meyopo yat mamege wemare.
A peasant has no extra income. He grows food for his stomach.
Ngat en mapinyo voini en beru ngatumo mapeki chana mukana man tiyu where nong yo mekwone.
So imagine 96% in 1969 were in that category.
Ketam kong piar bungwen we abichel percent. Oberu ngat ma no pinyo voyo mapeki yo mo kan metiyo lim.
Please remember that even up to 2013 we had about 68% still in that category.
Ke go kono mena ma piar alibario ki apara dek watieno ki dul dano ma pol ma pegi yo mo yele me no ko mabe.
And the major cause of this problem is what we said, the 20 years of civil war and even growth in our country.
Adugine oberni me no pelwenya det mo berwile bo wakanyi wa dano ko vone ko meno.
So those 4 societies that I mentioned,
Dula ngwen madaluo ke uni ba?
they gave us the following consequences.
Adugine long tn.
If we understand these consequences, then we can start to heal.
Kawanyang adugine ni eni chidongo cha no kidio me no ni cha.
First is that it gave some of us a martial sentiment.
Mukwa uno uminwa ke tammo mawana no kwere jemi.
Who knows what a martial sentiment means?
You can explain further.
A martial sentiment
Kita wana no ke jemi ni ni.
Is that feeling of I am the only one who can fight.
Ene kit win mo ni win ni anda te piara kana ana twara lwen kana.
I resolve all disagreements by fighting.
Dok an bana lwen lok ma kan ma ti kwere atiro ke lwen.
Because the rifle is what I have.
Pien gere yano la nyomu dogu ene gen mana ti kwere dong loy duchu.
But anybody can pick a rifle and fight as long as they have a cause.
La ko ta mene pe konya pien ngata me kwen twara no mu dogu lwen takati ti lok gere piere kene.
Plus, by feeling that I am the only one who can fight, I disable others who would give me support in fighting.
In metam ni man in kene giri twara lwen itwara loyo ngata mo e kano nyo mono twara chungkwiri be me lwen.
So this sentiment
sometimes
manifests itself in civil wars and disagreements. The second consequence was less attention on economy at a household level. So many of you might know coffee was not introduced here. It was cotton. But do we grow cotton? Still grow cotton in parts of That's gone. Eh? But they told us that there is a cash crop and food crop. So if you compare the prices of cotton, A 60 kilogram bag 60 years ago
kilo piar bichel mo piar bichel ngich
would give you more money than a kilo or a ton of cotton.
o kelli chena maduong loyo pama kilo ali bachiel.
Yet it's a fight, it's a struggle to get both cotton and coffee out of the ground.
Kono berluen matek me kwanyo pama ki kofi nyokawa ki ngom.
What was the purpose by Lugard and his people doing that?
Lugard no gen giti nano gen ngo gen kitim mamege.
Keep the north as a source of army labor.
Ni kumaro ba po yelgi owe obejo mamere bino ki choji mon melwenga ye pefu.
Because you need to recruit the army, you should have production in one part and in another just have soldiers.
Pian ne meno lobo ni Uganda ne ba kai mero luenwa lumon jet kumalo eno lufu jet kamo kana ye.
Was that you who did that?
Oberi yene kele ano ni ko.
Did you participate in that decision?
Yene bi mo tam ne kumalo be no pe luenye kan ko pe kumano.
So if you don't know what the cause is, you dance to a false tune.
Jemi kan in penge ngomo kele ba e chiaro kwere kumano.
When you say that there is a cash and a food crop,
Kai wachi meno nanti chamu mai furo pichana kimo kana machama.
you are putting a mental lock on what you can do with all your abilities, the jitas I mentioned.
Le erni neti tue kira dana mero tamo kwere ki ker me megene tue yo iloro.
I just want to know, are you following me?
Otika lobo ka hara kumbeti?
The beginning of change is honesty and knowledge.
Achake ma laga ena beri ma da kinongo ngech.
Would northern Uganda and Acholi not grow coffee?
Anga ana waini meko maname Uganda kawa nyo coffee peti kifuri ye.
Would it not do tourism?
Anga waini mano petro kelo alolimping ko maname Uganda.
Would it not grow maize or simsim?
Nyim ke nyogino pe fure kan.
It can, because it has even better land for mechanization.
Iya dana jemini wen fure ko malo.
It also gets the full sun than many parts of Africa.
Cheng benerie nyo kan beno mabe.
Why do you keep it in the wasteland of production?
Pingoy kero kamo ni meno eni ba pe fure ko malo kan.
Because you needed to use it for something else as a
Pieni
tool.
no ngato mo wachi ko marino tie picho e monyekan.
So when you have leaders who are either leading from behind,
Kai tike lutela magitika tela ni aka ngich.
or they are too confused by being next, they carry the culture,
Onyo wigo nyenego pi tamete kwar magen ko don yenyo chon.
or they don't look ahead to find solutions.
Onyo pagene na nyimwe lagamo betie.
They reinforce what Lugard locked on our senses.
Gien gi mer gi gede kum tampa lugad gi kumalo tie picho e monyekan.
They make us think
Gi wano tamo
of what is wrong.
ni gen maraja ye.
The Bible says, "Who unto you who call good bad and bad good?"
Bai we chane kum yen gina yen luo gena be ni raj gina raj be ni.
We can't lead unless we know the facts and resolve these mental troubles.
Pe we twero tela ne kwanye ka wano nge da ka wano yo me chao pe ko gi enigini.
The third consequence that came out of that four societies that I mentioned,
Ma deke mo aki kwai
Was it-
kabira ngwen ma luo gini.
introduction of politics of religion and tribe.
Ene chui wi bie mo katika malengo no jenge kum kaka onyo dini.
Because in the run-up to handing over to independence,
Piene kar ma wan chere de loj ken ba.
you needed to recruit people by your tribe or your religion in order to win.
Ono meri cho dani pati mamegi maluke ki dini mamegi welo.
So you can imagine recruiting someone on a tribe is not an economic interest.
Chi ya da kenene cho ngato mo ni pati mamegi maluke ki dini ene pekelo le miching dano.
It's not a strategic interest for
Oh.
the region.
Pa beru yo mekelo kero ikamere money.
It is not even an interest to say the next generation should find something good.
Bo beru bena gina konyo dano me wekele yalwak madobo bino ni ba unongen mabe manogi chibuno chon.
It is only seeing your country in 5-year cycles. Just
Eno
5
ni
years.
weko ine neno lo mamegi I mwaka bita nyimi kan peneno pi yalwak kodo.
It doesn't matter how I win,
Pe par kona lo inining.
however way I want to win.
Yo mo ken keta amer ko de loch.
Whether I use money,
Kona ti chene.
I want to win.
Wangani ngara mo wachi ene loy.
Whether I use religion in the night, I want to win.
Kona ti ki dini yo mo ken yo diwo wanga loy.
Whether I stoke tribal anger, I want to win.
Kona kela papa me kagerwa mela mal wanga loy.
However way I want to win, I will do whatever it
Yo
takes.
mo ken kita mero ko ti mone mira nena loyo.
Now, if you introduce that in already a fractious society, what
Kai
happens?
kele la ko tami eno ikaberi mado poke ko.
You destroy This is my number 4 of the consequences. You destroy a national collective ethos. What's a national collective ethos? That we are only as strong as we are united. We are only as good to the extent of the badness in us. And we cannot overcome badness or evil unless we are united under national ethos. So I find these two things interesting. Bunyoro appeal to Ankole, Toro, and several chiefs in northern Uganda. When we had a governor called Wilson, from 1902 to around 1910, Bunyoro said, we have seen the sinister move of people to divide us. Can we not unite and chase away Governor Wilson now that we know these people don't mean well for us? They asked for a collective effort, no one listened. In 1953, when Kabaka Mutesa was exiled, people from Acholi, Lango, West Nile, Ankole, Kabale, they said, bring him back. Bring him back. He's one of us. They demonstrated. The Kabaka returned in November of 1955. He didn't notice that there was a national movement to bring him back for uniting us. We missed working together to remove our differences and build a stronger country. Those two things, I find them intriguing. Few people drive unity. A number of others want to keep us apart. I don't want to take a lot more time. You know how much it took for even NRM and this leader to be acceptable. I don't need to accept President Museveni just because he comes from somewhere. If I were a Norwegian living in Uganda and I knew something about this country, I would follow a man or woman with an idea to unite us. I would not follow someone because they are Norwegians. But it takes time for people to understand. It takes leadership. It takes resilience. It takes teaching. And many of those traits have died. That's why I thank the team here from CNC, from our leaders, that they can say, Odrek, you come and spend 2 hours on this day and speak what's on your heart. And do not use a platform of faith to speak about the soul, and you forget income, and you forget history, and you free people to go home, but you've given them Panadol. Yet they need an injection to heal. By knowing where they come from and setting their eyes where they should go. So here is what holds us down. Think of a stone, a rock. You see the top of the rock, but there is the chest of the rock. There is also the feet of that rock, and the feet and chest are larger than what you see. So let us take what you see as a rock
Chi kong wan nen kong gin na inti nena chalo gori.
as public commitments that we will change.
Chalo mine pa dano ma wan tuar lok ne.
The good intentions that people see.
Tam ki ma bejo ma dano neno ni.
The dressing nicely and talking
Roke ma
nicely.
be ki lok ma be ma ki wan winyo ki wan neno.
The externalities.
Ki yo jim ma woko ma wan neno ni.
Those are the easiest to do for a human
E
being.
anu ber jim ma yot me keme kwere ka wan neno.
If you go to the chest of the rock,
Ke chiari ko got ko medong.
is this example understood?
La bolen waten yang wati lupane.
I could use the English word iceberg, but we don't live in Norway. We don't know an iceberg. We know a rock.
Nya twalo kom iceberg me na we ice mo matiri ma ano poleno tite pili.
So the chest of the rock that you don't see, which is
Ko
hidden
got la
under,
bol ma ate mine ka ma no peti na ka malengi.
is called the behaviors that reinforce the words I use.
Ene kemme ki kit pa dano.
It is
Ma
what,
wano to tit kwere me kela la ma be.
it is what I do
Ene ngo ma ana timo.
or what I don't do.
Nyongo man pa timo.
It disables what I said.
Li eno ni ngolo ngo ma na ana wajo ko.
It is insisting
Eno beru moko.
that I will not change this
Ni
behavior,
an pa be la ko kirani ene ni.
yet
Kun
I have said publicly I'm changing.
kuna wajo ka malengi anda be la ko kirao.
So behaviors,
Kitwa
culture,
te kwar ma moa.
they eat our words.
Eni chamo lok ma wano logo ko weng.
We say them in the morning,
Wajo gyo diko.
they are dead at lunchtime.
Ni wajo gyo diko endo di chengno gemopaka.
Because our behaviors
Bien kitwa
are not aligned
to keme
with what we have said.
kingo mano wano wajo.
But the rock also has feet.
Endo got kume ba tiene be tie ya.
The feet of that rock
Tien got eno ne kamayo
is,
chuye.
is invisible.
Penen kamaleng.
Sometimes it's 5 kilometers underground.
Chamo keno kilometer big pin tere.
You need explosives to blast
E
to go
mirno
down.
bom bom ma mucho ko wek eno keto ket
You
kamaleng.
need harshness to go down.
Miro gero wek chet pin non kama tiene tie.
You need to get dirty.
Mirno chit kumi.
You need to sweat
Miro kwa chue.
to get to the root
Wengenen we luire
or
kunu.
the feet of a stone.
Kama te gotene ti ye.
It is called our thoughts.
Eone ke luoni tamma mekwa.
What we think
Gen mawano tamu.
and how we think
Kikit mawano tamu kwede.
determines the chest of the rock.
Obu nyur kamalen kede ko got
It
kwede.
determines the rock that we see outside.
Obu chimu ket got mawanti neno ne.
Change starts at the thought process.
Allah tamme ki jok ki tamme megiya.
What you believe
Gin ma ini ye.
determines how you think.
Oe chimu ket ngoma inde tamu be.
Determines which risk you will take or
Obu mo
not take.
tam chimu kin yo ma yene bi kwanyo.
Determines your level of resilience or failure.
Chimu be moko tamme me nyo bi ujalo ko.
Determines informal actions the world will never
O
see.
oe chimu ket ngoma bi kere teach malobu
So I
buneno.
ask you to dig
Chinir
deeper.
matina ana temani jet matut.
Starting today,
Chakanir matini jet matut.
question your thoughts.
Chak penyo tamma megini.
Question what you have believed
Kong
about
de pen
yourself.
gina ngoma ana ye ni.
Question the assumptions you've made about Gulu and Acholi.
Ke pen kong moro gina ngoma ana nero ke gulu beru.
Question the things that you've grown up thinking this is the solution.
Chak penyo gina ngoma ana kwanya ni ene dong la gambe
Step
kwana ni.
outside.
Ke chak tam ne ngoma ti wako.
Sweat.
Ye kwa kuchwe.
Get dirty.
Ye chi kumio.
Change the thinking process.
Where lock keta ini tamu be
You
kwede.
will change the stated intention.
Chi bi loko ngoe biena nyim.
So let me tell you, it is hard to do, it is easy to say.
Amira wechi ni tek ba me kerne teach endo yot me wajina waja.
Change for leaders
Alaga pelu tela ba.
is taking leadership responsibly.
Ene me kwanyo kit me tela kuni keme kwede.
There are two examples I want to give you, and I will do a small skit and close.
La bol ti ario mamira wechi chabe nyorgi mama nok ti da
There
loro.
was one pilot.
Ti pilot mona do dege mo.
He was flying from Moscow
No tika tuk aki Moscow.
on 23rd of March 1993.
Do ma dek pi ario we dek.
He had 60 people on his plane.
No tik da pi arabi chele dege ne.
Among them, there was his son
Ken
and
gino ti
daughter.
wore ki nyare.
He had been a good pilot.
No ber pilot ma be ada.
He was taking his family for a holiday
No ti ter do gange iwe kamo.
from Moscow to Hong Kong.
Me ake Moscow chere Hong Kong.
When a plane gets above a particular distance.
Tiru mo maka dego karo o yeba.
A pilot switches into autopilot.
Pilot nego wego dong tuk pier kene.
A pilot can also sleep
Ka kenye be pilot dong tuaru niano.
because he has set the course.
Piendo kero dege yone kome.
So you changed your thoughts, you've set the course.
In ilago yonio chi ikero.
Nothing
Kamu
should
ngamamero
change that
chari ye.
course.
Mare o kamo mangemo ken betuaro dongo.
So this pilot, when people slept and all was okay,
Karmadong dano don niano.
at 30,000 feet above sea level,
Matie foot ali piara dek marukuno.
he went to the cabin and picked his children.
Eno chiaro kamalu tieno ti yeni.
He got the young girl who was 11 years
O
old.
kwanya nyanga mati mo apara
Said,
chili.
you want to know how to fly an
Wa
aircraft?
imiro ngekide tukudege bien
Come sit.
bien beri ngara donge.
So the young girl, of course the plane is in autopilot.
Nene dong no dege no tika mo magi setting dong.
The young
Tie
girl-
tuk dong mabe piara kene kenyu.
The young girl turns,
Anyani
the thing
lago.
is turning.
Lago enen gen kan lock do wero.
But the turning is false because there is autopilot.
Ento piene meno do setting o diyo
She
baton do.
says, Daddy, it's
Anyani
turning.
wa nene tika tukudege di duwe dege dong.
Daddy,
Duwe la
I'm
wala
a
kan
pilot.
kuja. Wa anba dati pilot kara baba.
He said, Car, go
Why
off.
bien in kar chere.
He brought his 16-year-old son.
Okay, the word mati mo apara
He
bicheli.
said, Daddy, I also want to try.
Why baba anba mero temene kiranye.
He tries the aircraft.
En beno temo.
But the boy's legs are long.
En to tiena wobi no bo nyono no kama mero ki nyono.
He presses accidentally the autopilot.
Chi o diu button no gano mero poti.
The main pilot does not know that the autopilot is out.
Pilot kume mano di na ne bi arare me chon punge ni wodo di gano mero poti yoni.
The plane turns,
Dego to lock choro jona.
it turns real turning.
O loka madano ngene no.
Suddenly the plane,
Atura
shoots
shot.
up.
Dego tu chero malo.
It throws everyone in the cabin cups. People are
Dano wen mono
shouting.
voro kuja ni no dange shot.
The real pilot is confused.
Pilot kume wi onyana.
He tries to touch
O chako
every
guru jemi
button,
kan kuja dong.
but it's only 2 minutes
Dakika rie kan.
above a mountain called Kuznek
We got magalwani kuzne.
in southern Russia.
Matie ko ping me Russia.
The plane crashes in the mountain.
Dege no poro iwi godi kono.
I'm telling you the story from the black box.
Awachini ngeno ti record ma kamo maka accident ti me ki choy penyi dege.
These sounds were picked from the black box.
Jemi eneni ma anti wachini kino ki kamo ma record me dege ni no du choy penyi katika tok.
When a leader has taken people up,
Ka la telo ter dano maro.
they have given him responsibility.
No kimi ni dong dok tichia.
They have entrusted their lives in your hands.
No kimi ko pa dani chi in la tele.
They have not given you responsibility
Peki mi tuer ni eneni.
to play with it,
Metoko ki ko pa dano.
to please everyone,
Ni yom chin dano wen.
to make girlfriends in the church,
Ni kelu ti anyera wen
To
be
steal
ti anyera me
district money.
nyena kwere kanicha.
to shout, oh yeah, but inside you have
Me
hatred.
dangane yo ko mer ende ko ni kuja no iwan gena pat.
Leadership
Tela
is deep responsibility.
o be dokti ma dieta de da.
Men of God, I ask you to take leadership responsibly.
Do teach palo ba o te tela chala gena pia.
Don't take it if you are not ready.
Ka peti atera pe doni tela.
Don't take it to please people.
Pe te tela me yom chin dano.
Take it because there's a calling on your life.
Kre tela piano be luo kom ko ni.
Take it because there's a burden on your
Kwan tela
heart.
pian te ne tie.
The burden to change something in your
Te
generation.
me la ko gema yelo ak ma megi.
The burden to leave your society better than you
Te
found
me
it.
la ko kama iti yeno be mabe makaron kire no
The
ko.
burden to cure the disease that people have played with for a long time.
Te me chao tuo madano to ko kwerbe kar malach.
Are we together?
Watika chel.
But there was another pilot.
No pilot to kana beti la bolo kana
His
be
name
ngamini.
was Salenberger.
Nyeno Salen Baga.
The year is 2009.
Mwale bariyo ka abungwen.
He lives an airport called LaGuardia in New York.
O aki badege magalwani
It's
in
an
New York.
an airport in New York. Don't worry.
Badege magalwani mati New York.
The aircraft takes off. He's carrying 155 people.
Dege utok no tika tionda mia piar bicha bich.
3 minutes into the flight,
Dege ka dek imalo.
he hits two birds and both engines go kaput.
Uyogo winyario engineerio medege welding.
So he starts to perform
Chu chako temo.
landing activities
Kit
just after takeoff
me piero kon fruto
with
katuka.
dead engines.
Ke engine ma pekatich.
He calls all the airports round.
O go chi mo pin wen
He
kan.
said, I have had trouble.
New John at Pego Tim.
I have 150 people with me.
Jaro mia Pierre Bichi
I need a runway to land.
America ma mera pia yo
I
yacht.
only have 5 minutes.
Atiki take a big meti mumeno.
So because New York
Pien New York
has a plane landing every minute,
Tiki dege matika pie deke ka wen.
there is attention to many other planes.
Tama pilot jo ati pin menano dege matika donya ye.
The control tower says, hang on,
Ke
we
walke ku ko manok.
will find you an airport nearby.
Wa bin nongin ke badege mo kana kan to pie chok.
Keep circling.
Mete yele.
He said, I can't circle for more than 2
John
minutes.
pada to yele makada kan rio kan.
I will run into buildings.
Oh John I yo good yo at oho.
The other person says, hang on, we
La
are
war ke ku
looking.
manok ko wen nganen ngato timene.
So Captain Salenberger turns
Captain Saren bage lock
and looks at a river.
Chineno namo
And he recalls all his flying lessons.
chi wie po ekom kwan duchu.
And he recalls that he is carrying people.
Wie po ben titi dano.
And he recalls that his family
Chi wie pe ni
and his
ate
country
ki lobne.
will not blame the man in the air control room,
Pe bu ko kom ngana no ti konye pin ba
but the
de.
man who has been given
Edo
responsibility.
ngan mag mi yere dog teach me gwa ko ba dano ne.
He lands the aircraft on the River
O
Hudson.
chualo dego pie nam.
The aircraft sits on the water.
Chi dego to pie wi.
You can imagine running 5,000 kilometers
Ke nan kong mengwe kilometer ali ba
and
beach.
quickly landing on the water.
Chuchot itu pie wi pi chot.
The plane settles.
Dege ne pie wi
The
pi.
rafts come out.
Rough cut the
A
weight
few
engine.
people are injured.
Dano mano
scratched.
nok no awan mano nok.
He gets everybody off the plane.
Dano wen karo ki dege ni.
When everyone was out of the
Karma
plane,
dano wen kar ki dege ni.
across,
Ilaga
he picks his hat.
o kwanyo toke.
He's injured.
O wane beno
He's the
no.
last out of the air.
Ene o kar ki dege ma get
To
ki
make
pilot.
sure
Men nano ni.
That what he took up,
Ni dano ma
he
ene
brings
telo.
it down.
Dano mo kar pego rueng. Kwa be berutie bukar wa mabe.
So are you a pilot from Moscow? Or are
Unity
you a
pilot mo
like
ake Moscow
Salenberger?
matuka tuka kwa ba dano ke lutien ni.
Do you care about the cargo God has given
E
you?
paro pite malo ba mi dege ni ini ano ni.
Do you care about the cargo in your family
E paro pite malo ba mi dog pa mamuni.
at your parish level?
E parish mighty yeni.
Because you think Rwabwogo is telling us national.
Pienta mi Rwabwogo ti wata jema kuja.
Because I want to speak to you about production
Piena mi lokwidi kum nyayo lo.
and the work I'm doing outside so you can
Ki teach
see
mati mu wa ina.
if you don't have good captains,
Ke pe ki do de mabe.
change will not work.
Alors pe biron.
Which captain will you be?
Ini mi merbe la do de menani.
So-
Kena rioni.
Here are the two things
Ene jema ria meriti.
I want to leave with you.
Mira wek kiri.
Can I get my items? Bring them here. First,
Mukwa
I want you to focus on production
o John nen ket menyaro le.
as leaders
Chala tela.
for the domestic market.
Pe chuk mati get ga ngero ni.
Because I first came to Gulu as a student
Pien ka be bieno gulu chala tien kwan
in
kar mo.
1992-93.
Piar mo ngwan we rio piar ngwan adek.
I also came back
I bidugu chen.
when what was this disease that called Lukia, Dr. Lukia,
Ebola.
Ebola.
Adugu chen kar me Ebola be na.
I came to see Dr. Lukia when Ebola was here. I was a young
Abe
boy,
bieno kana Dr. Lukuya lieli.
but
Mano fratiri.
I liked reaching every corner of our country.
Amaro o vudlo wani o weng.
As a young boy,
Chala tiena wo matiri chon.
because I felt that my background gave me a sense of understanding.
Pien ane kama ake ye o
Of who we are.
mia ket me mar kama ngamana bedu.
In those years, I never had a cup of coffee
Kar chano pa worki ko me kofi ko man ba.
in a nice restaurant
E restaurant mo a ye mabe.
or called a friend and say, book for me a hotel. I
Onya go
arrive
chimbo
at
na
2
remo
a.m.
kan wo jar ke no aka burmo be. Pe ko me no kar
Or
chano.
drove without interruption from Kampala to Gulu
No adu no gok duoyo muta mo kan la bonke jok mo
and all the way to Nimule, bring them
na
here.
wani mule. Pe no
This-
time ba.
These things
Gemini yegini.
require
Miro
reinforcement.
a tieluko
Every good behavior should be reinforced.
a kitweng mabe mir ke tiel kore.
If you don't reinforce it, it will die.
Ka pe tiel kore to.
So what I'm doing today,
Gen mate timene tin.
I am going to the markets
Ati achiari chuk mapapat.
of the West. This evening,
Otiano Matin.
I'll be leaving the country for announcing somewhere in North America
Can chair in North America.
a fund to support exporters.
Many you are no make to conquer fu.
Next week on Monday, we have South Africans, 100 people coming to Uganda.
South Africa in Uganda.
We have opened a trade hub in the Balkans in
Why
Serbia.
Why
Why do I do that?
Magi.
A child that has never left their village, they think their mother cooks very well.
Latin mapo ake chargi. Tamani mena la terima be loyong duju.
I am trying to expose our people, our young
Ati
people to the rest of the world,
wa jo wa me katika maleng no jo wa wile mo kana betie.
so they can understand that the Japanese don't have cows like the cows in Gulu.
Ni meno ba nenba Japan kuja gipeki dio charo dio me gulu ni.
But they sell yogurt online when they don't know what a cow
Endo
looks
ki
like.
charo yogurt ki internet kun penge kama aki ye.
They are richer than us because they have more knowledge and exposure.
Golon jelo wa pian gi men giti ngej maduong.
So those markets
Achuk eguni ba
are now demanding
gitika penyo.
companies to supply them.
Company mapapat kun gimir jemi.
Young people to grow coffee and
Vulu.
process it.
Me furkawa dokbena me nane girego ki kan.
Seem to be processed and sold.
Ni nyimba nyimke te ke porpede charo chuchoti yo mo mo bi mo ke charo. Vanilla,
Cassava,
guana en.
to be processed into cassava flour and taken out.
Itwero rekunea ino magone ke chwalo wako.
These sweet potatoes, the one in Uganda, they call it Lumondo
La
Muganda.
yata en la yata mwa yata chuli yenini.
When you land them in Serbia,
Ke chwali Serbia kacha.
they think this has never existed
Gita
anywhere
uni
in the
manaka
world.
yang ujuana ino ai ko parapar ki polo.
They say this one can even cure men impotence.
Gi wajini anyway. Wacho mala tongo poripi. Le yata maae kanyi.
They
Uberu
think-
yat bod ki kunu.
They think it's exotic.
Gita mi ino ai kama bodu twal.
But for us, we kick it and
Eno wan ke ene yero mutayari murichi beru mot.
nobody cares the importance
Ngata
of
par
it.
pier beno be peka.
We took avocado from Uganda,
Wakwanya avocado ki Uganda kai.
and the Serbians brought their
Ki sab
avocado.
jome sabia ko kelo ovakero magi.
We brought a chef,
Wakelo ala terimo.
and he cut in the middle of both.
Chi ongolo.
And he
Pogi
showed
ario.
them.
Chi nyotigi.
One of Uganda had 3 of those inside.
Me Uganda ni. Ke neno mochame ti ya dek pali Johnny Chani.
He said, I am a chef of 20 years.
Owaji anabela terbe mo
I
apia
have
rio.
never seen avocado like
Mananga
this in
apia
the
neno
world.
ovakero. Chala ma aki Uganda ni kamoy ken. Mamwani lanyu megio.
I was here, we throw them away.
Mwaka ni wabaya baya te ovakero ni chanu ore
It's the
dan.
same with mangoes.
Ma muyeme be kumeno.
It's the same with everything.
Roma kije mukene mapapa mo
The
aki
things
Uganda
I'm
kan.
telling you, I live them.
Jemmy mati wechu
I told you
anakwo
I'm a child
anena.
of the farm.
Awaji anwar be lafu.
I know how much my father left me with those cows that produce 0 milk.
Angeyu dia di ma waro ten ma kwenye ma pa mi chakulu.
It has been 25 or something years when he died.
Mano be chok ma apia riwe beach
I
makara.
am struggling to increase production
Ati
through other
yele
cows.
mena meru kit chak kita dia imi kwere.
I did not have money to start a factory.
Cheno be rupe me chak factory.
I got the small land because I had a title for it.
Ano ngoma tiri ni piano ena no
Title for
title
the
letie.
land. Title for the land,
Title ni tima
For
waro
the
ten kwere.
family.
Pe do gangwa weng.
right? I got people who had money and machinery.
Ano jomatiki chene ki machine.
I gave them my land to set up a factory.
Ami gi ngoma mega wegu career factory.
I said, collect milk from everybody.
want
I
to-
also put.
Awaji munu gu chak ba ka weng an ba be mer chak mo
So
manok
that
ye.
where my father left,
We kama woro gi ye.
I don't leave my children.
An
in
pa
the
wek
cell.
lutia na ben kenyu.
I disrupt the culture that I found.
Ko anene meno.
produce.
Te kwar ni ena ma jemi ber manok ni duwo ki chengi.
But
Agbala ko mer jemi.
The factory has trouble processing because it requires capital.
Endo factory bo ber gi pega pien capital ma dit mete.
Northern Uganda does not drink milk the way Tororo drinks
Ko mar
milk.
me Uganda pe maru chakira toro mar kwere.
I need to take milk to South Sudan and to Kenya.
Mera kwan chaka te South Sudan nyo Kenya.
I have to find markets for that
Mera
milk.
yin chuk pe je ka bere
So
ni.
I am living my own story. I'm not telling you things I don't do.
Anati kwongo ma ti mo pati bekle na bika ya.
Some people switch on the lights, they don't know who pays.
Jo kene di ma pe nga ma cholo pe.
They drive a car, they don't know who
Gidwo
bought the car.
mutaka ena pe nga ma yo mutaka nga pe
And
mo.
often they don't tell us.
Bena pe wachi wa be.
If you meet a man who has hunted a lion and killed it,
Kai no na cho mo dwar ne
he
kono
has a
vo.
tactic on how to kill a lion.
En no tigi diero kede ne kono vo.
Don't underrate the knowledge of the people who have made it in your community. Listen.
Pe cha jo
They
ngech pa jo mutu jo
will-
pili ko kameberi yeni.
They will challenge you
Ge tugu chunyi
as you challenge them.
keta in be tugu e chungi.
So how do I now get those markets utilized by northern Uganda?
Chuk egen yo weng ma lo kwet gini. Watwaro o yeni ning.
We have to create consortiums.
Mier wa ononge wa oberi ka che.
Nobody can go on the market alone.
Peti ngarma cher chuk pier kene chi loyo.
The market is dangerous.
Chuk geba.
It requires a particular standard.
Chuk rometie.
Our country has not had food laws.
Awachi Uganda po beri ki chek madoro gen me cham.
In the morning, I was standing at the corner
Udiko na bera go e kwana
and I
kaini.
saw big pineapples in a
And-
wheel,
Wheelbarrow.
in a wheelbarrow.
Aneno nachi magi tika chorne wheelbarrow.
And two young people were exchanging them.
Aneno ajo atieno kitika lokogi
Very
kitika
large, very good pineapples.
nachi madom
I
abejo.
said, Lord, where are these from? Are
Awelo
they
ba
from
mako ino
Gulu?
ai kweno ai gulu kan.
If they are from Gulu, I
No.
said, thank you, Lord.
Ko ai
Thank
gulu
you.
kan ba fu ya da
Thank
mi
you
de
that
yo.
someone is growing
Afu ini
these.
ngarmo tika fu nachi kan
Because
be.
that pineapple in Serbia costs 20 times what it costs here.
Piani sabia ko nachi nachi matiri me ni we. Tien wele tien piari okulu wele makan.
But it doesn't matter how much simsim.
Ena peparo pi
How
ya
much
ni
pineapple?
matikan. Kono nachi.
You do it alone,
Kono fur
you
keni.
die alone.
Ito kwiribe keni.
We have to learn to work with each other.
Omer wa fonya metit ka chelo
A
jowa.
consortium creates a
Ka
standard.
wano bino ka chelo grupi.
It
ber
has a
maber.
leader.
Mer na tela betie.
A consortium helps to find money
Eni konyi ko beri dul. Konyo me no chene.
to finance exports.
Me no ne we no chene me chwalo je me wako.
Young people, I want to have time and we come and speak
Vulu amera
about
duk
those
chen wa bet ka chelo wa
consortiums.
loge.
There is no way Uganda will exploit those markets unless we aggregate our
Peti
production.
yo mama Uganda bo chere chuk magi. Ni kwani ka wano tar ka chel. Mo chera nyim.
But there is also no way we can exploit those markets.
Peti yo mo be me otar donji chuk magi.
If I grow cassava,
Ka ana fur gwana.
you grow simsim,
Ini fur nyim.
he grows coffee,
Chana fur coffee.
mangoes,
Muyeme.
and all of us are growing different
Dok
things on
one
small
weng wati
plots.
fur gina pat. Pe watu chera nyim mabo.
If a company wants to process one of the products,
Ka company mere ne mere ikon
it will not
fuachel.
have enough supply.
Pe bo ber je me mo rama me chere factory.
Some companies don't want to invest in supply. It's not their
Company
business.
pe mero ni giber ka pe ka
They
je
want
me
to
gini.
pick a standard and give a price.
Gemeti romo be tie chiki wachi ana mero mana yo fu man.
Do you want Norwegians to come and do
O mero
that
jo me
for
no we go
us?
bien kan.
We should figure out a way to do it.
One mero nen yo ngomo to yo aigi.
Leadership
Tela
is a burden.
oberte
Burdens
te arida.
come from calling.
Te aki luon.
Apostle Paul
Apostle Paulo
was beaten with Silas.
la kwena gin ke Paulo gin ke Silas ki fodogi.
Instead of feeling pity
Me ka par pi kwo ki chan maginero.
at midnight,
I twin the wo.
they raised a song and
Gen go yelo
praised.
dwan ge mar me war lo
They
ba.
said, we are more than the
Gu
beatings.
waji wan jona
We
go
are
ni pe
more
mo.
than the hearts that we have
Wan
had.
dit loy food magi food wa
We are
ni.
more than trouble.
Ne wan ba wa dit.
And in raising a song of praise,
Kar mago yelo pak ba lo ban twin the
the
wo.
prison gates broke down.
Awani nyo ki dogola me vuju
The
yape.
man who arrested them
La cho mo ba
said,
ngini.
how can I have
Wachu
what you
jona.
have?
Ana twero no kuch ma wonti ko ni.
The jailer
Angan mutwegi.
is asking to get what a prisoner has.
Tika penyo ngoma la mavuchi tikwere.
Leadership is a burden.
Telo beru teba.
What are you willing to endure
Ini mero iter me kanyo gena
to
ngo.
change your household?
Where lock out ma megi.
Is it luck?
Oberu arem je
Is it
murem.
this politician who you don't like?
Nyogwak na chungi bi ma pe
Is it
marni.
your madam?
Nyogwak megu.
Whatever burden has put on your heart, fix it because you will help the next
Te
generation.
moy ken malo ba kere ko ni chango ko we bi ko ni yalwak ma e biano ni.
When we do this, I'm leaving many things for my next session when I come specifically on production.
Ti jemi mukan ati we ko na we alok ma duon ka wa dugu chen.
When we fix this issue of working together over particular products,
Ka wa chao ket man meti ken wani ko wa ko ti ka chel.
we will attract good talent in
Ngeni
Acholi.
mot ma duon ketalana ma duon wa bi kere ka chel ki
We will
acholi.
attract technology,
Wa bi luon diero inyonyo.
research.
Kwed
And these things will start to happen when in our lifetime we can see them
Jemi eno chako time koni kwa boy na no bena.
because other people have done them.
Pian jo kana dongo
We are
time
not
John.
the first.
Wan pe jo kwa.
But we have to get sweating
Endo mer kwa chwe
and go to the feet of the stone.
chwe chet
And
ka
set
tel
the
wit
course.
kama goti ye kama pe goti ye.
When that happens, our social behaviors will change.
Kali eno time ket wa be bulake.
And our ways of thinking about the region will change.
Chi yo ma wa na ko gang wa nyoko mane me Uganda
And our
loke.
ways of thinking about self will change.
Ka cham wa bena ma kira wa na ko pi wa
We
kana
will
loke.
be more confident in who we are in Christ to
Wa
achieve
ber ki tek
more.
twin ma dit I Kristo me no je me duong makara.
If we are Christians, we will say, thank you, God, for changing our thought
Ka wan lo
process.
ye da wa lo ba fo me la tamwa.
Because my parents used, before they were born again, they would put milk and boil it
Pian alu nyono mana
with the
fo pe go la.
finger inside.
No gi teru chak chi kerol wet gi chi le chi ye.
Then they feel that it's getting warm, they say it's now ready, let's
Ka
serve
go
it.
winyo no tiga lieti wa okay jona chak no chak ko kwa nyono.
Because someone told them that if you see milk or porridge boiling,
Ning pian ngat mo wa ke ne no chak ka tiga yenyu.
those are frogs from
E
the
ni
dam.
ngeni ba o gwara ye tiga aya gwara tiga aya.
Thinking can be dangerous.
Tamma me ngar ba to ki tamya.
The man has tried to boil milk so that he doesn't get germs, but he still takes germs.
La chone o temo teru chak wa ki ne ka nyei mati ye
Go
o ku di
to
mati
the
ye.
root.
Ento nen fut lir ker ye chien.
Go
Ti
to
ker
the
ye
root
peron.
of problems.
E on ke li peron.
That's how you change things.
Ene kita wala ko re jemi.
And when we change that feeling about ourselves,
Ka wala kita wa nene ko kita wa tamu ka komwa. O jona.
we will build better principled politics.
Wa be gedu ya ket me chun bi me
We
be
will
makaro.
not be led by people who don't know what to do, but they dupe us.
Jo ma pe nge ma mer ke tim pe ge te le wa
Because
I
we will
kombola.
say, we know you,
Ki wa wa nge
you
ba.
are our sister,
Wa
but
nge la
stay
mien wa.
here.
Wa ke no bet kan.
Our brother come
O me go ni
because
bien
you
te le wa.
speak
Bien ni logo.
and walk
Do ke woro.
and do what we
Do
are
ke
able
timo
to
ngoma
see
yene wa chi wa.
that can change us.
Ma to lo ko wa.
It's not your color.
Po beru ke kit
It's
me
not
nan ko.
your religion.
Po beru
It
dini
is
ni.
the thoughts you
O
change.
beru tam ma yite ko ren lo lo.
Come and lead us.
Bini te lo.
In the end,
Ya ge kene.
you may not use a spoon,
Petro ti ki male ga mogo.
you may not use a plate,
Mogo Petro ti ki chwan.
but you can eat food.
Ende tu yaro cham.
What matters is
Gina pere te kene ni.
kill the hunger,
Ne ke choko.
not how nice you are eating.
Pe keta ini cham ma be
That's
ko
what
de.
Uganda needs.
Ene ngoma Uganda miero.
It doesn't matter who brings it
Pe para ngama
and
kelo.
what it does,
Ke ngoma timo.
but it helps us to
Endo
solve
konyo
this.
wa me yeo me wara nyim.
That's how I think.
Ene kita tamo ko de.
Now, finally,
Ma ge
I
kene.
have said finally many times, but this is
Awaje ma ge
final
kene ti
because
na
I
duong.
want to do this.
Ene nong ma ge kene adaba la tujiri. Ana ene nong ma ge kene adaba je ma ge kene ti na duong.
How do
And-
you change culture?
I logo te kwar ni ning.
How do you change culture?
I logo te kwar ni ning.
Can I ask you to stand?
Ke amal da kong da.
Let's stand again.
Kong da a.
Let's stand
Chungo
again.
chungo kong nong ma le chung ma le.
Let's do another jump, a
Kong da
little
wa
bit
pie
of a
da
jump
ye pie
again.
da.
I have 15 minutes,
Ati kita ke apar bi chikan mo dong dong.
and I want to finish and take some questions,
Ametri atia ko chi wa nong la
if
pe.
that's okay, because I don't want to leave without listening to you.
Pa meta a la bon winyo yen.
Let's do another jump.
Kong da
10.
pie ko ma.
We start from 10 now, back to 1.
Cha ka pa.
10.
Apa.
9,
Abungwen.
8,
Aboro.
7,
Abero.
6,
Abichel.
6,
Abichel.
5,
Abich.
5,
Abich.
5,
Abich.
4,
Angwen.
3,
Adek.
2,
Ario.
1.
Achel.
Take your seats. Take your
Nonga
seats.
beri, nonga beri, nonga beri.
Culture
Te kwaro.
is like a brain cell.
Oberu chalo gimo ya dami.
Brain cells,
Gimo kuja ya dami kuja.
they die after a long time,
To ikar malach.
but they shape how you think.
Endo gichimo gidor kena itamu kwede.
Culture is cellular.
Te kwaro ba oberu ginati ya dam.
In Uganda, we call cells butafali. It's like a brick in your
Beru
head.
waini matafani mo.
To disrupt culture
Wek ini ichot te kwaro.
is to wrest from the current
Ene menane me yue ki jema time kompeti.
and put your hand in the future
Chimeri ya ichi ya
and
nyim.
say, I don't know,
Chiwa anpangeo.
but I am willing to disrupt today.
Ento ati ater me la kujemi.
That's how
Ene kitma.
Europeans
Jo maula
were
echa.
able to live using a horse,
ena go a ki tiki kana
and putting an engine
go kero engine ai dong
and having a motor
go
car.
cha ber ki
It's a
engine
motor.
obero motor
That's how we
mo
call it motor car.
motor nyo
And
engine
then they move from the engine
go a ki engine
to the aircraft.
go tuk na dege
Someone is disrupting the horse
ngato man ti ye ni
in order
jem
that
makitema
they,
juini
in order
lokaya
that they can go far.
we gi chet mabo
And now they leave the aircraft.
okay dege cha
They have a space shuttle
gitie ki dege madui loy kita jui
to go
matio
and
dano
see
ni
other planets.
we gi chet gi nen ngati time yamo kunu
If this climate change kills this planet,
kaka enini kota beti chwe mabe
a few of us should live on
wan
another
wabi
planet.
kanyo cher kamu kana da ye
They have taken insects
gu kwanyo nyei jemi matuk malak
in Netherlands,
gu in Netherlands kuja
maggots
kwidi
and crickets.
yudi
Crickets. And they have made a recipe
gu yubo gu cher gu ker ka chiel we gi nena ngoma kata ki ye da
that these things are edible.
ni jemi ni eni chame
And we might go to another planet where there is no way
ni
to
watu cher
plant.
kamu kene machampe eni bi konyo wa
We can freeze them longer
watu ero keto gi make o gi do
and
ice
we grow them in a lab
chi watu ero gi we do kama ki kwedi
so that in the years to come,
we ngwa kama duang eji nyim
after we have had Africans for lunch,
ka
eaten them
dong
and finished
ka
them,
dong wa chamo del chol batio gi
or
wen
when they have rejected us,
onyoka gen go kwero
and they are
wa
wiser,
mago do riak loy wa
they want to process their things at
ge
home.
mer gi chak tiji yobu jeme gi gangi
Their children want
lo
jobs.
tieno gi mer tich
They are no longer divided on tribe and religion.
pe dong go pokamalo gi dini ki kala
They may kick us out.
o jona jon gi twero gwe wa
They may create their own
gi
planets.
twero yobu ka beri pigi ken gi
Let us prepare
o
food for
jona
that time.
wa yup champi karma nyim
So maggots and crickets are a meal
chicken
now
ero
in
di
Europe.
enini ki kwidi eni beru gena chama no bote kuja mape wache
For us who have grasshoppers that fall from the
one
sky,
kind of futi kono ki uchene kono ki ngwen
we do nothing to bring them.
hulu wa ki lakwere ko mero
We only catch them in November.
wa ma ngwen kono nyo chene dwe ma par chelcha
We have not thought, how can we brand these and sell them to
pe wa
them?
tama ni mono jona ngwen ka ana ma ngwen ma duong
Change
atwer
the-
change dwe dak ni nya ngwen ni
Change the thinking,
jona lok tam mo
change a man,
lok tam mi kene nanu ko
Change a
jemi
man.
lok tam mi
shape a new society,
nen kire lok kam be
create
yebe
a bridge to the next
nen ni
generation.
men kero pe mo beru tie makubi ni ki kar ma nyim
So to change
me loke
culture,
te kwar ba
we need a team spirit.
wa mero
So
til
I
kachel
want 6 volunteers,
amer kong jo matwero ye dana bichel kan gubino kan
men who can come quickly.
cho abichel matwero bino kan yor yot chela ria daga ngwen
You come and
bin
demonstrate for
Bien, you-
us how we do this.
bin yot wa kera wa temo ko de
Let
jeme
them,
ni
so it's 2 teams of 3, right?
dana daga dak tuncha dak tuncha
Do you have enough space? So
Well, take
get
a chung
2
mabe.
to face here,
ario
turn and they face down.
chung ko mano
Okay?
e yoko
Uh-huh. I had 2 examples, but my people lost one.
na tigila bola rio ana chel kirwenyo ko
Put another.
kera
So let's that's one team.
na tima chel
That's one team.
tima chel chungcha
Bring these ones here. Maybe we do these ones here so there is space.
en kelo yung kan we obet malach mandan to anene
Put them down. Just put
kat
them
kiping
down. No, there.
kat yung kuja
Okay? Is this how it is? Or it's the other way around?
tiko mano kaje kar mabe kato mabe
Good.
kumano
So, no. Turn it.
La-
You
la-
are
la-
taking
la-
a lot of. I think it's the other side. Because
Chalo
this
kiri cha.
is,
kumano
no, but it should face down. Yes, I want it face down. Okay?
kumano
So let's demonstrate.
ko kong wa nyot gi mo kan
Okay? Bandika put. Okay. There.
ah
Uh-huh.
katieni ko
Give me that.
mi akenyo
No. Give me that rope.
mi atoli ano ni
Huh?
eyo ba
See where
utie
my-
ra ko tieni tie ra tieni ko
See where
mano
my shoe is?
menano kit
Huh?
kala dit kar ko tieni
Okay.
ano
So I need you to do the same.
in be tim ko mano rak tieno ko mano
Facing, going
ba
there.
utie
Second
kar wa
person.
ko wa tie ko
In front
ma
of
o tole rionio chel tung chel
No,
chel
face there.
inan yung kan
Turn. Come here.
eyo
Just the way I've done it.
aha nen kita ala dit tika tim na kwere ya won't it no yor yor
You know
ya
what I'm holding?
yo kumano won yang yor
Okay.
yor
So you can come and replace me.
Command, yeah.
They now see what to do. Come.
kumano ya
Okay?
yo
All right?
aya
So I want you to watch these people.
chamere nen jo ti mario eni
They are leaders
gilu tela ba
on a ship.
giti imeli
Leadership.
gitie
They
imeli
must sink together or survive together.
ai la gimunyo ka chiel unyo pege mon bene
The other word for this is teamwork.
eni ene ribe teko
If we can't work as a team,
kapa to ti chal ti dula
no
chiel
one person can change a society.
eti ngatu mo matwero loko dano
So
pere kene
what I want you to do, this is where we will stop.
eni kama wan wabigirie
Me and the interpreter, you
One-
will stop here.
won me na o kan
So at a count of 1,
ka kwana chiel
you are going to lead yourself.
ibi telo jo metelo
We
giba
want to watch you
wamero neni
raise legs together
il tien ka chiel
slowly,
mori
and we will give a gift to whoever is here
wabi mi
first.
ngatu kwa o kan
Okay?
yo
Are we ready?
utia tayari mun joni
Do
eni
we know what to do?
wangengo amir watim
So just a bit of caution.
win mabeba
The feet must come up together
tieni
and
miro
go back
amalo ka
down
chiel
together.
dok pin ka chiel
Your steps must go up,
o il tieno ka chiel
down
dok
together.
pin ka chiel
If any one of you messes up,
ka ngara chiel utimo
another
marach
will not move.
ngeni po woro
Are we together?
tika chiel aya
Ready?
atera
So 1,
chiel
1,
aha eyo
2,
aha rio polo ye wono loyo uniango liwe dong chingo pelo tipalo ba chano porogo eya dong chi mateo jowa meri eyo polo ye eno lonyo be polo ye eya amen
Okay, that's it.
gekenyo
So you want to continue?
omero medeno
You want to win?
omero loyo
What? So now you have to do reverse.
aya go
Exactly.
reverse
He
go
has to.
reverse
He has to be the one facing this way,
aya
and you turn quickly within.
eyo
No,
aha.
he
eyo baleo eneno
So the one who should be behind should have been in front, coming back,
eyo
not the one in front turning. So,
nan
it
matia
is you
ngeche
who
mero
should
laka
turn.
kwang laka
So
laka
you turn and face this way.
laka eyo
Aha.
laka eya eyo le ba mi yogum kere jone ne put pe o ba jone put pe o pour yiti yele
Okay.
eya aya
One.
1 chare la yo aha
I want
Good,
all of you to watch.
won wa mero nen eya
So there is a crisis in a community,
awaje ne na yela
and
ti
you
go
have
gan
given leaders
wa mini
responsibility,
gilu tele dok teach
and you want them to act like a symphony.
donc mini gen
And
guti
to
chali
solve
jo bagti dok
problems.
teach met te ko
Ah.
pero
Aha.
aha
Aha.
eyo
Aha.
aha eya eyo
All right. All
Polo ye.
right. That's enough. That's it.
amen le bando mi ogum
That's
don't you
enough.
forget jowa amen for my attack
So take them out.
Ah.
Can we clap for our?
don't you up Johnny for my attack
So what is the moral
fonya tini ngokan
of this example?
la bolen mawano nyorni enini
What's the story behind this example?
ngo mawano tem wache kan
First, leaders
mukwando tela
can stand
gitwer chung
and fall.
ben giporba
They are not superhuman beings.
gen peni dir
They
pegi
need
dana
to
dana
learn on the job,
gen begi fonya kedi dog teach
but they must admit that they don't know.
endo mer gen gu yeni pegi ngeybe
Admission is not weakness.
yin me yeni jemi loyi to
It
ber
is
gora
willingness to learn.
endo ber mir me fonye
Secondly,
mario
there is no one MP
petie
or
ngatu
one
mo
pastor
petie MP nyo pastor
or one RDC
onyo RDC
who
mo
can change an area.
matwer lo ka berne
It takes more than one.
tero malo ngara chiel
But it's not enough to get together.
endo perom porom
We
bira ka
must
chiel
have
kan
a symphony.
mero ber neno
And the people should see that we are synchronized.
dan be mero neno unti ya
Whoever
chiel
wants to come in our middle, we will say, get off.
ngata mero
Don't
rupu
talk
wa
about
wacha pe yelwa pe
Don't talk
balwa
about my brother
pe
behind
lo ko mera
or the one in front,
nyongan motelo nyim
because we will lose.
bien wan wabi porogo warwenyogo
Finally,
magekene
this story
a ododoeni
should teach us
nero fonwa
that failure
ni jemi mengaiba
can be repaired.
gitwari yopone
There is such a thing called repentance.
tiki mo magalwa ni ngot
When a brother falls down
ko me omego poro
and they repent,
dogo ngore
forgive them,
temier kija
welcome them,
jole dagaye
because everyone will fall at
den
some
dan
stage.
wen kar mo bo poro ya
I thank you so much.
foi uno wen
I want to have more time.
amier no ber kar malaj biu
I came with a young man who I want to collect. Maybe I should leave this because CNC is still here. This fellow called Francis
omego ni magalwa ni Francis
will work with our CNC team
tiki committee mamekwa
to get some names of those who want more teaching.
meno nying dan wa mier fon makar matine
You know why I'm doing that?
ngepi ngatimu meno
I hate imposition.
o John I
Just because people are available, come
I
and
dek
teach.
dan me
No,
bere bere ka
You
be
must
rom money
want
ana
it.
la peke
you must need it.
in mere met
You
ala
must want to change.
mere mere
You
ala
must want to do it
mere
yourself.
gom meti mjemi ni kumi
If we don't do it that way,
kape wati mo komano
both the teacher
la fon
and the student
wa kila ten
have
kwan
wasted time.
no go balu chawa
Thank you and God bless you.
fo itolo ba mi ugum